All right, folks, I think we can jump in here. Welcome, everyone. We'll take a couple minutes here before we get started, just as people queue up. And let me get my presentation going here. Bonnie and Millie, if you guys want to jump on video, I can introduce you here as well. Perfect, look at that, good timing. Awesome. Well, yeah, maybe we start there. Appreciate everybody taking the time. I know I see I've got about 125 folks on, which is fantastic. Appreciate you all taking the time this close to the deadline. I know our team is underwater, um, and I'm sure many of you are too. But excited to talk today. We're going to focus on and kind of the evolution of my firm, actually, and really happy to have Bonnie and Millie here, a couple key players on the team, and kind of talk through this evolution for the last couple of years with our firm. So I guess we should probably start there. Bonnie and Millie, I don't know who wants to go first, but do you guys want to do a quick introduction um, for each of you, and then they'll be kind of jumping in along the way to add a little color to how things actually happened. But you guys want to do a quick intro?
Sure, if I can get my mute turned off there. So I have been a CPA for many years. I've been with Golden State Accounting since 2019, I think. So I've been there for, I think, a lot of the evolution of the firm, in a lot of different directions, lived through the COVID experience, and the ways that that reshaped a lot of the way that our team works together. Yeah, is there anything specific you want to know, Dave, or?
No, that's great for now. I think as we jump in, I think you'll probably share a lot more. Um, but I think that's probably a good start. Millie, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Millie. I'm on the administration side at Golden State Accounting. I've been with the firm for about a year and a half now. So I was there when True Prep was starting, and then now we're transitioning to Juno. And it has helped definitely with our process, and we're excited to share that with you guys.
Perfect. And we'll have Tanishka from the Juno team run the chat there for the most part, and feel free, Tanishka, to jump in if I need to see anything. I can only watch so many screens at once, and so I'm going to have her run that while we present here for you guys. And yeah, okay, perfect. Can you guys see this okay? Bonnie, Millie, can you guys? Perfect. Okay. So yeah, we'll talk mostly about the firm today and what we've done. And I'm really grateful to have the team on here because, to be honest, a lot of what we have done as a firm, it's been the members of the firm. I always jokingly say this to folks in the Juno world when I talk to them. Um, I've been very benefited by the folks on our team. I'm not a super process oriented person, but I have the benefit of working with a lot of folks that have put in some great processes. And Bonnie has helped out quite a bit in like carbon templates and work papers and things like that. And then Millie's driving the top of the kind of beginning of the process for us. And so you got a couple really key players for us here, and I have a bunch of other staff members too that have been a huge part of that. So I think as many of you with even like a relatively small firm would know, it definitely takes a lot of really good folks to make this happen. So, but let's jump in. So, as you guys know, we got a couple weeks left in tax season here this year. And the funny part about this job and this profession is that you're running through kind of the same thing, right? Like already thinking about next year and what we can do better for next year. There's a couple windows, one of which we're about to approach here, where you can make changes and improvements and kind of go back through your like templates if you're using those in your practice management tool, or go and look at new tools like Juno that you could use to automate parts of the process. but it is, the same problems come back over and over again. So it is like, I think a mindset of continuous improvement is really important. We talk about that a lot as a firm, and my team is really involved in that process. Like Bonnie's driven quite a few of those, like work paper improvements and template improvements, things like that. Millie's always given us feedback on what's working, and like managing the client aspect of this to try to keep work off of everybody else's plate, or at least like inefficient back and forth off their plate. So really important to be thinking about this in a continuous way. Um, and that it's not just about technology. Like we can talk about technology today. Technology is an important part of this, but it's about your business model and your team, and we'll talk about like roles and things like that, how they've changed over time. But also in the Q&A, I will say up front, feel free to jump in with questions. As you guys have, we can interrupt. Would love to hear from you guys as well. And I'm curious, I've never actually like shared about our firm publicly. So I'm actually just really curious to see what the perspective is out there. I don't think anything we're doing is rocket science, to be honest with you, but I do think we've worked really hard on it for a few years, and I'm proud of the kind of the progress we've made. So quickly about our firm, I bought the firm in 2015 from my mom. It's based in the Bay Area. We peaked at like 12 full-time employees. Today, we actually are down to 2 full-time employees and 6 part-time staff. So it's a really different structure than what we had, probably in like 2019 or 2020. And then we're onshore only. Sorry, one last thing on there. So we actually like pay pretty well for what we're doing. I think we're much higher than the national average in terms of what we're paying for preparers and for our admin team. We also call our ops team, which you guys hear us talk here about in a minute. And then, on the timeline here at the bottom, the one thing I wanted to call out is, for me, COVID kind of changed everything, and it's actually a big part of why I started Juno. But it started in 2020 with like the chaos of, we had a lot of people leave the state of California, and then when things started to reopen, a lot of we just had like a huge amount of turnover in 1 year because people kind of went back to like in-person jobs, or they just like didn't want to work virtually, or they weren't working out virtually. It just was a huge point of stress and chaos and all of that for our firm. And so it kind of set off this journey that ended up having, caused me to start Juno. We tried to backfill those roles. We actually like couldn't find great people to backfill them. We didn't have a lot of training resources. I'm sure like many of you, like we were really struggling to find kind of junior staff. And then what's not on here is like in 23 we started building Juno, because I thought, like, why do I just keep trying to go hire people to do this job? Like, for, let me say it to you a different way. Like, okay, you're fresh out of school, I'm going to pay you like whatever the number is in different parts of the country, 55 grand or 60 grand or something, and you're going to work 60 hours a week 4 months a year. You can never make a mistake, and half the time you're going to be chasing clients for documents, or you're going to be typing in numbers off of PDFs. It's not surprising that we're struggling to get people to come into this profession, given that description of the job. And I know I'm being a little bit direct, but I think that is an accurate description of what we're trying to hire for. And so, I thought like maybe we just do this a different way. And so that's kind of where we set off on the journey. And Tanisha, I see some hands popping up. If you want to manage that, you can pop in if you want and interrupt me, but I'll let you kind of manage what you want to do in the chat. And so we spent a couple years trying to backfill and train people. We realized, like, hold on a minute, we can't do that very effectively. And so let's try to make this job better, and do that using technology to take away some of the really redundant parts of the job. So where we are today is we've got more flexible staffing. We'll talk about why that's important later. We actually have more senior team members. We've got like we have a really good group of folks, and we have more admin or operations support than we did previously. So we actually have 2 admins among the, like, one full-time and one part-time among our staff. And so that's a pretty high kind of admin ratio, but it's actually quite intentional. They do a lot of the work in the flow of kind of tax preparation for us. One other thing I didn't put on this slide that I should mention is we do some bookkeeping. It's about 20% of our revenue. And then about 80% is tax. So we are like pretty much a core, tax practice with a little bit of bookkeeping and advisory work built around that. And we do advisory work as part of the tax return. We don't always break that out separately. So a pretty typical firm, I think, for the most part. And then let's talk a little bit about we'll talk about our tech stack here. Just I'm kind of setting the scene for you guys, and I'll have Bonnie and Millie jump in here. As kind of color commentary, but you've got to have key elements in place before you start to really automate. And there's a couple really important ones. One is data. So where is your data? Is it consistently saved in the same places? Are you really taking care of your data? Are you collecting information from clients in a consistent way? That is really, really important. And then the second is processes. And so your processes need to be documented and consistent across your staff. And quickly, our tech stack, we start with our organizers. We use Intuit Link for that. We'll probably switch that. We're switching to TaxDome this year, which we can talk about if you guys would like. But this is what we use for the beginning of tax season this year. So we use Intuit Link to collect those documents. We would then go into Carbon. We had templates set up in Carbon for each tax return and the steps that we need to go through for the tax return. We store those documents in Google Drive, actually, as our kind of internal firm drive. We do the tax processing, if you want to think about the preparation of the return automation there in Juno, which was called True Prep earlier in the year. So Millie's and Al and Bonnie too have been doing this for a couple tax seasons now. They've got the most experience of anybody on that. And then for signing the return, we send that out in ProConnect, basically. So I just want to call that out. I know we've got ProConnect on both ends, but just so you guys know what we're talking about. And you can plug in different tools here along the way. I think everyone's got probably some different logos in their tech stack. I really like that this is totally browser based. That was really important for me. And also, we feel like I think Carbon and TaxDome are both very strong practice management tools. And I really like the custom organizers in ProConnect. So anyways, I'll pause there. Millie and Bonnie, any comments on that in terms of process for us here and overall approach?
Not a whole lot. I think you covered it pretty well. I think that to your point of everything being web-based, since we are a virtual firm, that's been really critical to kind of keeping us all interconnected, speaking the same language and using the same tools and having visibility across a geographically diverse team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we took our lumps when COVID first hit on that. And we were already mostly browser based, but any points of pain that were remaining became very painful. And I would include there scanning things, right? So what's funny is Millie, although someday I do need to move the mail over to you, is not getting she's not spending a lot of her time scanning documents. And part of that is that we have clients using the portal. And then part of it is when they do need to mail things, we've got a virtual mailbox, and then it forwards actually to me. Ironically, I was going to hand that off, but we don't do very much scanning. It hasn't really been worth moving that over, with notable exception of a few clients that have a lot of K1s. But other than those couple days a year, we're not doing a ton of scanning because we did, and this took years, by the way, but we got clients to adopt the organizer in Link for us. And I guess, Millie, I don't know if there's any comments on that front. I think you were here for the back half of this, but I think it took about 5 years to get people to actually use those organizers properly.
I think the people who don't want to use the organizers got annoyed enough that they found us not a great fit for them. Because we were unwilling to accommodate some of those heavy manual time-consuming processes. And I think that's for the best, especially as a virtual firm.
I see cheering happening in the bottom right, which is awesome. We make a bad fit list every year, and it was there was one year where, well, this is extremely exceptional, but we couldn't find staff, and so we fired a third of our clients, and that was a huge amount of people that were not using they just refuse to use any of our processes. It's not even like tech or not tech, right? There are those people too that have trouble figuring it out. But there were people that just straight up were like, I'm not going to use any of your like, I'll do whatever I want. I'm going to ignore 40 emails and then, submit my stuff 5 days before the deadline. And we have a bad fit list that we keep all year. And we kind of throw people on there, and then at the end of tax season we go back and like go through it line by line and figure out how bad it's going to hurt to fire those people, and then kind of communicate out before the next tax season, like, hey, we just don't think this is a good fit. We've done that the past maybe 4 years or something, and it's gotten down, I think, now to, I don't even know how many people are on there now. Millie, you probably would know, but like 15 or 20 maybe a year. And we do about 600 returns. Some of those are like individuals that have an LLC or S corp or whatever it might be. So like kind of groups of clients, but something like that. So we still fire a decent amount of our folks, based on like issues that we're running into, and I think that's really important. Perfect. So then talking about this, it's creating this type of practice is not just a technology thing, it's a business model thing, right? And so I wanted to kind of compare before and after. So before, we were billing on hours. This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. It was almost purely hours. Um, we were mostly reactive in terms of like, waiting for stuff to come in and then getting started on the process. We're still more reactive than I would like. It's really hard to be proactive, as you guys probably all know in this industry. You're just behind the ball, and like certain times a year, everybody wants to talk to you, and then the rest of the year, nobody wants to talk to you. So that part is easier said than done, but I think we are getting more proactive now. And then in terms of growth, like we would have, and I don't even think about this anymore, but I used to think about it quite a bit, which is like, okay, we're going to grow 10% this year. Like I need to hire another person and get them trained up so they're ready to go for next year. And then like hope I don't lose somebody in January, to put us behind the ball, which did happen to us, I think, a couple times in the last 6 or 7 years. And your capacity is limited by the number of people that you've got. And so that is like the old school kind of way of running a firm. And I'm not great at running a firm, by the way. I will say that out loud. Like I don't want to scream at people to work more hours. And like, I want to work with people that, generally speaking, I want to work with folks that get paid well and like are happy and like their job and all the things. And so for that reason, and maybe many others as well, I just didn't have as high a profit margins as you would have at some other firms. So we were running like 15 to 20% profit margins, probably like 20 actually. And then a lot of our time was on low value work. It's hard to really quantify that because we don't necessarily like measure high and low value work, but I would imagine certainly more than half of our time as a firm was spent on like chasing clients for something, or doing like a random task that we're not going to get paid for, things like that. And that shifted very significantly. And then on the right, you got kind of what we're doing now, which is like focusing more on value added tasks. Like we have value based pricing, and we have proactive advisory services. We're doing more of that. I think actually, especially this next year, we should get into that a lot more now that we've freed up some capacity from a tax perspective. We have improved our AI capabilities and overall just automation across the stack, which is part of our ability to grow, as we go into the future. And then our capacity is limited by like how good our processes and our systems are, as opposed to just being people oriented. And I'll give you like this year we have reduced like full-time employees and gone to this flexible model with our part-time folks, which is really natural, especially for like, we have a lot of folks that are moms, and I'm a dad as well of young kids, and we oftentimes like don't want to work as much in the summer, are willing to work more in the spring when the kids are in school, or the fall when they're in school. It works out really well. What I like best about that is I get to keep really good people. And so if I can give them flexibility, I feel like it's harder for someone to take them away from me because I'm allowing them to work as much as they want to work. And that also aligns everybody's incentives. And we'll talk about that at the very end a little bit of like just staff incentive alignment. And then our margins have jumped way up because of that. And so part of that is staffing, part of that is process, and part of that is automation. So we've doubled the profit margins and then some, really reduced that time on low value work. And then we're driving more revenue per employee, or you could say like spending less time on tax returns. Like there's a few metrics, they're all going to be about the same. Like we reduced our time on tax returns this year by like 40 to 50%, which is just huge. And so that has had a really large impact. Bonnie, Millie, any other comments on that one in terms of evolution of a firm? You guys have been here for a lot of it.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I think you've covered it all.
Oh, hi, Dave.
Beautiful. So let's talk about the people a little bit. This is where you guys will jump in. So, in terms of like Millie's role, I'd love to talk about that. So Millie, not everyone will have the same definition of like what you would be doing. And maybe talk a little bit about like the beginning of that tax return process and how that works and how you're structuring that for the team and some of what we've done here in the last couple of years.
Sure. So my job in the beginning is to make sure we have all of the documents from the clients. So I go through our link portal system, make sure all of the documents are in there, which cuts time from our preparers to have to go back and forth between the clients. So we go through the link portal, make sure everything's in there. Once I determine that we have everything, I save all of our documents, download it into our Google Drive portal, which is our, like Dave said, our centralized location for where we keep all of our documents. And then all I have to do is just go to Juno and upload everything. Juno pretty much does all my work for me, which is great. It uploads everything, it validates everything. There are a few documents you can go in there and make sure everything is input correctly. And then you just send it off into our tax software system, which we use ProConnect. And then pretty much does the initial data entry portion of preparing a tax return. So it pretty much does like the first step of preparing a return, which honestly, I think saves time for the preparers, which makes it easier for us to get more returns done in time. Yeah, and then we still bill accordingly to like the quality of the work that we're providing to the clients, even though it may take us a little bit less time because of Juno and having to cut, maybe it cuts like an hour of data entry time per client, depending on the document load. But we're still able to bill that to the clients because we are still providing that quality to the clients.
How long does that process normally take you, Millie? Would you say like on average for a return?
Probably like
Just the Juno piece of it.
Obviously depends on the document load. If there's more documents, it does take a little bit more time, but I would say between 15 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
Pretty quick.
And we have, just for people, I should have mentioned this in the beginning, our typical return actually on a 1040 is like between $1,500 and $2,000. We do tend to have pretty complex clients. Our average might be 30 documents maybe that we've got coming in for a typical document, like 25 to 30 maybe. And then a lot of K1s as well. So it can be a lot more time consuming, especially if you have like, we have some folks that have maybe 20 or 30 K1s, which that obviously takes quite a bit of time. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's a pretty quick run through. And then one thing you said there that I think is really important is that you're doing that data entry, so like when we push that into ProConnect, historically that would have been a tax preparer's job, right? Because you'd think like, now I'm doing tax preparation, I need to know which field to put this data into. And so that would have been, it's a way that you have leveled up basically, right? And you're starting to do like the preparation role because Juno's already got it pre-mapped, right? And I just say that for the people out there, that one of the things that you could think about with automation is like the ability to level up within your roles. So like now someone on my admin team is doing the data entry and creating the work paper. I never would have had them do that previously because I would have had to train them on like, oh, here's where all this stuff goes. And like, oh, in the case of, I don't even know, like as California STI, like this is where you need to put it in ProConnect. And it would have taken a long time to train somebody on that. And again, like being a small firm, we just don't have a lot of training resources. So now, Millie's doing part of that. And when a tax preparer jumps in, that data entry is done and the work paper is created, which is a huge, at least a couple hours for most of our returns. Um, into the process. And I just, and Bonnie, you can comment on this as well, if you want to, or we'll talk about the preparer next. But like, if you think about this for just a minute, one of the things that I have noticed, and I will do some prep when we're really overwhelmed, but I'll do a significant amount of review, my part of the job is a faster because like more is already done, basically, if that makes sense. And so I wonder, Bonnie, if that's true for you as well, just coming in with like those things already prepped.
It's definitely a significant time savings. I think you're actually eliminating kind of 2 points of entry, one being the work paper and one being the tax return. And even with some of the very, very complex returns, like obviously the work paper that comes out is your starting point, and there's a lot of manipulation that has to happen after that, depending on the complexity of K1s and just so the interaction between a lot of different activities for some of these heavily complex clients. But just getting the kind of high volume and low reward data
Yep.
entry parts out of that, you're actually saving time in 2 places with the work paper and the data entry into the tax return. And so it actually keeps your brain fresher, like you're not
Yep.
having to go back and forth between all these documents and doing all of that multiple times. And so I think it actually, some of the less measurable benefits are retaining your focus and not being as burnt out on some of the really repetitive and uninteresting parts of the work.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's right. And I have said things slightly different way, which I think is is basically the same, which is that I only have like a certain window to do work, right? And so like whether it's I have a meeting in an hour and a half, or like, if Bonnie, if you're running around, you're like, okay, I got to pick up the kids at whatever 2:30 or something, right? Like I have so much time in my day as a block, regardless of what your work hours are. And for preparation in particular, those blocks need to be longer because you want to be able to like start and finish a return ideally, or at least get it like mostly finished, if then maybe there's follow-up questions or something like that, and at least get it all the way to that point, as opposed to like starting and stopping. And so there's 2 really important kind of insights there. One is, and I talked to Millie and Bethany, who's our other admin/ops person. Hey, like the more you guys can actually get all of their documents, the better. So spend a little bit of time there, because like starting and then missing a couple things is really disruptive for the preparers, because we're trying to always like prioritize who's next in the queue. And if I go spend an hour on something, but then I'm missing really important pieces of information, then I'm kind of like, all right, I'm going to stop here because this doesn't make any sense. But now if I had a 2-hour block, I only have an hour left. And then I have to look at my to-do list and be like, what can I do in an hour? And I may be like oversimplifying that just a little bit, but I think the point is, to your point, Bonnie, about like having being a little bit fresher mentally. It's also about just like time. It's just when I have 90 minutes, I want to go in and like complete a return, ideally, if possible, or review a return. And it's been easier for me on the back end to do that. On the right, a couple of quick things. These are screenshots of Juno. Like the top is where you've got all the documents listed that have been uploaded. It tells you what needs reviews. So like Millie is the one going through this particular screen. And then when you open up the drawer, you'll see what is that bottom image, where you've got the extracted data, the original document on the left and the extracted data on the right. And it's got some like signals where it talks back and forth with you. So we can take all those like, 1099s, 1098s, W2s, K1s, all the different type of tax forms, and extract it and break down that information. So we still have a human validate it. This I know is one of the questions out there. And I got this question actually from another customer through the Taxome forum this morning. we have confidence scoring. And so like even the best AI systems are going to be like 97, 98, maybe 99% accurate, depending on the document. They'll be really high on like W-2s and very basic 1099s. They'll be less accurate on like really long brokerage statements or K1s. And we're always working to optimize that. But one of the things we do, if you were 97 or 98% accurate, or like on a really long broker statement, maybe like 95, 96, the problem is you'd have a mistake on like every return. So what we do to prevent that from happening is we have confidence scoring, and then based on certain variables, we will ask the user to go in and validate that field. And typically we have it right. We just want someone to take a quick double check, right? And so you kind of look at, if you look at the bottom right there, you're going to look at like the information we scraped off, and then you're going to hit validate. But the one comment I'll make there, so even though we're in the high 90s in terms of accuracy, we ask about a decent number of fields. And actually you can kind of see in the bottom right, one of the examples where we might ask for a field. So it says like, is this for taxpayer or spouse? And I know it's a little bit small, so you don't need to really actually look at it, but that's what it says at the very top there. And one of the things we're trying to gather, and this is not always on the form, if you think about like a brokerage statement that has a different name on it, we won't know if it's for the taxpayer or the spouse. It could be like a child, or it could be a trust. And we want to know kind of where to assign that for like married filing jointly or separately comparisons in certain software. And so it's not just that we're asking to validate a particular like number. We also could be asking for additional kind of like metadata that goes along with that form. Similarly, if we're taking a 1098, we're going to ask like, is this for a Schedule E or the Schedule A? And what you guys will notice, we're actually launching it this week. Bonnie and Millie, you guys would probably be happy to hear that we're going to start pulling the data into the system when you export it, and you're going to map it to like a specific rental property, right? Or your specific like home address, basically, which would be really nice, because right now that's easier said than done. We're kind of pushing it blindly. It's actually very hard to like pull that from the tax software. So it's something we've been working on for quite a while, but we're starting to roll that out this week. So what I mean by that is like we can map the mortgage interest to the right form. That's really important, because even if we push in your Schedule E data for a rental, as an example, if we don't have the mortgage interest in there, or we like make it a brand new rental property, then you need the prior year data, right? Or you have to remap all the assets and things like that. So it can be a lot of time there to kind of remap if we don't match correctly. That's something that we're working really hard on. And that is a huge technical lift. Like actually, I think I actually don't think any of our competitors do that right now. It ends up being a new schedule, which is a real limiter. As you guys well know, because even like on a Schedule C, you can have a car or a home office, right? That's like in the fixed asset module that's then pushing to a Schedule C. And if you change the Schedule C, then you break all of that from the prior year. So not to get too technical, but that's something that we've got coming in the product that I think will be really exciting. But the primary thing here, for Millie, is the ability to like really do what was historically considered tax preparation, right? At least the beginning stages of that. And eliminate 2 points of data entry. Millie, just a quick question for you on that. Any other comments on like your role changes or how that's felt as we've automated more over the last, for us, especially the last year and a half?
Yeah, it's cut down a lot of time too, because I don't have to go in now and rename every single document
Yep.
and have to cut and paste documents. If it came into one 100-page document, I can load that if I need
Yeah.
to now. It really does cut a lot of time. Um, and make sure the validation also got a lot easier now too. It tells you which box exactly where you need to go look for that information. Me not being able, I'm not a tax preparer, so I don't really know much about the prep side, but it makes it so easy for just the administration staff to be able to look at a document. It tells you where to look in the document to be able to validate everything. So it
Yep.
does make everything super easy for me.
Exactly. Okay, I know there's questions, Tanishka. You're welcome to ping me or unmute yourself if you want to jump in on that. I see more hands going up. One quick comment I'll make on that while I wait for any kind of feedback there on questions is, we use like admin and ops, and part of why I've like grown that. I'd rather have senior people. I don't want like the turnover of having very junior people. I think with high wealth clients in particular, like they really want continuity on our staff. And so I try to like, pay well and have good flexibility, and then also have a little bit more senior folks so that we have less turnover. But you also could have like a lot of firms do have like junior tax preparers that they hire like right out of college or whatever. And like that person could still do more of the data entry, having a simpler tool that kind of maps it out for them, and certainly spend less time like looking around in ProConnect to figure out what field they're supposed to put a random piece of data into, which can be really helpful. And so it's not necessarily, you don't have to structure it exactly this way, but I think there are different ways to kind of skin the cat on that.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important, and I don't know what other people's experiences are with the tax software that they use, but one of the big heavy lifts and helps with this is that, and especially if you're talking about junior staff who aren't experienced, is you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to get something into the tax software. You may know where it needs to go on the return and this and that and understand what you're looking at. But with certain things, there can be that disconnect, and like something's not hidden, but it's structured in a way in the tax software that you're like, oh my gosh, I would never look for that input over there. And so there's even that time savings. And I'm finding that like write down notes about time spent wrestling with PTO and things like that has been reduced as a result as well. And I think even as an educational tool for a pretty junior person coming in and being new to tax prep, there's actually a lot of educational value in the way that it's laid out within Juno, and kind of just understanding the content of some of those forms. And I know we're going like super junior with that, but people do have to start somewhere. And I think it's valuable in that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll make a controversial statement. It's funny because I haven't listened to it yet, but I saw Jason Stats talked about this the other day, on one of his podcasts of like, is AI going to ruin like junior accountants? And I have the opposite take, which is I actually think that your junior accountants are going to learn faster because they can use a system that supports them and tells them like, hey, this is where this is going. They can look at reviewer, and reviewer will be like, the 1098 mortgage interest is $10,000, but on the return it's six, and that's because it's being limited, based on the mortgage interest deduction limits. And so it explains to them like what's going on. And in the same way, like if you look at, let me see here on the um, yeah, you've got like, on our, we'll tell you like as we extract data what we have not extracted from a form. It's actually normally in the bottom right there, and it would be up there, but there was nothing on this form because it's just a W-2. But we'll tell you like these are the fields we didn't take off this form, and that goes in the work papers as well. And that most of the time we're not taking it because it's not like take like a margin interest or something on a brokerage statement. We're not taking it because it doesn't go anywhere in the software. It's not deductible on a 1040, but we will tell you, hey, we did not take this and here's why. And so that can be like really helpful for people in terms of learning how to use the software.
Absolutely. We have some questions.
Yep, go ahead.
Yes, yes. So some attendees have some questions around how does Juno compare with SurePrep? So that
Yeah.
would be the first question. And second question is around Schedule C and E. How does Juno
Yep.
handle Schedule C and E? If you could talk a bit about,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, great questions. One, we're updating our work papers here in the next few weeks. I think it's probably 3 weeks out, if I remember correctly, to be a lot more similar and like create some overlapping functionality with SurePrep. SurePrep does data extraction like this. It's owned by Thomson Reuters. It is a very different product in that it is OCR based. We use OCR and foundational models. So we use like, your chat GPT style models as well. And we use both. So it's a couple different types of AI. And then our system, I mean, it's a little bit more like modern UI. It's easier to use, for sure. But But there's other like subtle differences in terms of usability I think are really important. So like you can upload everything as one packet. K1s don't need to be last. We take state data in addition to federal data. SurePrep has some limitations there in terms of state data or state reporting. And we integrate with different types of software than they do as well. So they don't integrate with ProConnect. We're adding Pro Series here shortly, which they don't integrate with, and they don't integrate with Drake. So we've got a few different types of tax software that we push to that they don't. But fundamentally, in terms of the part of our product that extracts data and pushes it to the tax software, we are attacking the same problem. There's two other parts of our product that they don't have. One is the advisor product where you can go in and ask questions about an individual client, like what are some savings opportunities. That looks a lot more like a kind of tax plan IQ or Holista plan, I'd say is more similar. It's very different than those tools, but I think that's more the competitive set for that part of our product. But the reason that exists inside of Juno is that once you have all this client data, it's really amazing to be able to use AI with it. I mean, I literally last night, I don't know if either of you guys were on the thread, maybe Millie, you were on this thread, but like Tambi was struggling to figure out how to report a weird K1 situation that we had. So like one of their companies bought part of their interest in a different K1. And we were like, oh my gosh, it actually was very confusing. And so I threw it into Juno just to see like how it would evaluate the reporting of the K1. And it actually gave me like a really, really nice response. And we did not have it right, which is interesting. And the only reason I bring that up is, I think as we move forward, that's going to be an even more important part of this. As you automate the basic parts of tax preparation, like the more complex pieces, you're going to work alongside an AI assistant, basically, is kind of the way I think about the future of the tax world. So that part of the product is unique. Sorry to drop my pen. And then Reviewer is something that we have just started. Like we launched that. We still technically call it like a beta product, and we're actually not charging for it at the moment. It just comes along with our Preparer product, but it's I think a really interesting like teaser of where this goes, which is we use individually trained agents to go and review parts of the tax return. And our team wasn't using it like in the beginning of tax season. It didn't exist at that time. We just launched it about a month ago, but that is going to be, like I honestly think it's going to be an accountant's best friend here pretty quickly, because what keeps me up at night is worrying about missing something or making a mistake. And so like to be able to support me in that way reduces my stress level. And also it's really expensive time, right? If a senior person is reviewing a return, if you can make that faster. And the thing I'll say about reviewers, I actually think in terms of leveling up, and that was kind of getting to the next thing here, and I'll talk about Schedule Cs and Es, so just so I don't forget that. It allows the preparer to level up a little bit and do more of the review. We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is Advisor and Reviewer here, screenshots of those products. And then quickly to answer on the Schedule C and E, you can upload, your own documents. It doesn't need to be a template that we give you and then it will tell you if you upload like an Excel document or a PDF document or a CSV, whatever it might be, of a list of expenses. Then it will basically tell you like, I've mapped them to these areas, and then it asks you to confirm them because it's unstructured data. So we want to make sure it gets to the right place on the return. And then we can push it directly into those schedules. And again, there's mapping to say like, hey, should it go to this prior year Schedule C or this prior year Schedule E? That's all coming here in the next, I think the first release went out today. I don't know if it was every tax software yet, but if not, it's going to be the next couple of days. And so you are able to push that data in from those forms as well. And then in terms of Advisor and Reviewer, that's kind of where I wanted to get back to like the preparer role, right? And so Bonnie has reviewed for us as well, but she primarily prepares. And I wanted to talk about the changes in that role. So like we just talked about the starting point being further down the road, right? The data entry is done, work paper's done. And I guess, Bonnie, you talked a little bit about like your mindset there. And I called it like being able to focus on the complex issues. But I guess I'll pause there and let you talk a little bit about like the role changes that you've seen as we've started to kind of automate more of this.
I think the automation has freed me from a lot of work that I would actually get frustrated at how much time it would take just to put everything into the work paper and then get it into the actual tax software. And, you know, you introduce that manual element and you increase your risk of manual input error. I had a previous life as an auditor, not like for the IRS, but public accounting. And so just from that standpoint, you're starting out at a point where you can start directing your mind and your knowledge and your expertise towards the things that are actually going to deliver a quality return and a good outcome for your client, and start to push you into that more advisory mindset as you're moving through the return, which is something that would typically probably land more in the lap of a reviewer. And so it kind of, to use Dave's term, it pushes you to that level up. And even with some of our clients that are super complex and we need to like kind of reuse our work papers from year to year because of the amount of like customized modification that's gone into them, just getting the bulk of the data entry into that work paper and being able to link things up saves so much time and kind of sits you down with a return that's already pretty well advanced through the process. I think something else that was surprising that I hadn't really contemplated before we got into busy season back in March and April last year is even getting extension estimates out for people. Being able to throw everything into Juno, pump it into the tax return, compare it to last year, look at what we know about their changes. And, you know, for this year, as opposed to last year, being able to pump out extension estimates in the heat of the season was so much easier and so much faster, and really allowed us to be able to look at things that we might have missed, and to give them a much more accurate and better estimate than we've been able to do in the past. And that goes a long way with clients because you're not winding up at this time of year having to tell them, hey, sorry, you actually still are going to owe 20,000. And they're like, well, why didn't you take this into account back in April? And so I think there's a lot of sort of accretive smaller wins along the way that stack up to a lot more value delivered with less time having been put into the return and with less kind of wear and tear on the brain of the preparer. And I'll speak maybe for reviewers as well.
Yep.
And so I have found that using Advisor has been super helpful. And again, coming from an audit background, I always like want to check and double check. But it even presents you with the links to go to the source material. If there's something that's extremely nuanced and you just want to make sure that your treatment is spot on and things like that, it's been extremely helpful for communications with clients. Some clients like to ask 1,000 questions and just explaining things to them. I used to spend so many hours writing emails in language that clients could understand to communicate things that they were asking about, which, not to be condescending, was a bit above their pay grade. And it's like, how am I going to help them understand this? They think they're asking this small question, but they don't realize that it's the tip of the iceberg. And so being able to let Juno do some of the heavy lifting, even on those client communications, has been really, really helpful. And it can help you get dialed into the information that you need faster. Even going back to, do we have all of our documents? Being able to get that list of what you're missing out to the client, even if there's some stuff that's more nuanced and more follow-up, I can get to those requests much more quickly. And when it comes to rental properties and trying to explain the difference between improvements and repairs and things like that, you can pretty quickly, I've used Advisor to help write emails explaining some of those things. And so has been very game changing for me, and I'm spending a lot less time on things that are more difficult for us to bill for than I did in the past.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And it's those little things can make a big difference, right? Like it's just, I empathize so much with what you're saying in terms of the describing something to a client can just be so time consuming, and you're like, they're not going to understand this anyway. And it's not even derogatory towards them. It's just like, I can't even believe I have to spend this many words explaining the complexity of tax law to you. I've even apologized to people like, sorry, I don't make the rules. I just trying to help you stick to them as much as possible. But there's like 8 exceptions to every little thing, right? And I actually like really changed my communication this year with clients. Like, and I've actually had multiple clients come back and be like, thank you for giving me such a thoughtful answer. And it's because I'm using Advisor or one of our other products to do that. Okay, perfect. So then I'm going to go through just a quick key hitters, and then I think there's been quite a few questions, so I can actually show you guys Juno just a little bit here at the very end. But chasing clients for documents, I'll just say like this, if you have not solved this, like you need to push really hard on this. This is where it all begins, basically. But that's the old way, is like chasing clients endlessly for documents. The new way is automated checklists and reminders. We don't do that. Like, we're not a portal, but it does start there. Like, I want to call that out very clearly for everybody. The old way is kind of like bringing in interns or like new hires constantly and trying to like train them as quickly as possible, and then having turnover later. The new way is like really improving your processes and continuously improving year after year. And ideally, depending on your staffing strategy, having people that are more senior so they can interface with clients more, which is kind of where I see this going. And even my admin staff, calling them like operations, is very intentional, because I want to get them out of administrative work. We want to automate that, and we want them to be able to do like the operations of the firm. Like, hey, just start, get the process rolling, make sure we're tracking projects as they go through. And I like this one in particular, like admins doing admin and preparers entering data and reviewers reviewing is kind of the old way, right? And the way that we've moved into now is that leveling up that we talked about. So admins are being able to enter data and set up the return, if you will. Preparers are able to like finish the complex pieces and then do the initial review of the return. And reviewers are doing a secondary review, as opposed to like doing the full review. My reviews got much faster this year, much faster, and it made my life a lot better, especially trying to run a tech company at the same time. And then in terms of what's most critical, again, like the top of the funnel for you guys in terms of all your projects is collecting documents. So making sure you really nail that. There's tools like TaxDome or Stanford Tax that have like customized checklists. Intuit Link is another one. If you have a custom checklist, they're more likely to give you all of their documents. And actually, just as importantly, then Millie, when she goes in, can see what they didn't upload, and she can ask them a question if we want to ask them a question, right? Like, hey, you skipped question number 8. Why did you do that? Or do you not have a Wells Fargo brokerage statement this year? That kind of thing. On process, again, like at practice management, I think Carbon and TaxDome are the best here, but like having processes that you document and being able to actually drive process change, which is something that I am not good at, but we have started to get better at as a firm. And I lean on people like Millie and Bonnie, and among other people on our staff who are really good at that. They can actually be like, hey, we need to change this. This is really annoying on this return. And we spend time on that as a staff now every year. Automation, obviously, Juno is fantastic for this. So we can jump into that in just a minute. The other thing I would mention is like most critical for your readiness is aligning incentives. And there's 2 pieces to that, like value-based pricing for clients. So making sure that, if you reduce your time by 40%, you're not reducing your revenue by 40%. That would not be great. That is an incentive problem. So you can fix that with value-based pricing. And there's also incentive for your team. So like, what does that look like for your team as they do more work? Are they incentivized to do that? Like, us using more and more variable hours is really useful in that way, where people are like, they're not looking to spend a bunch of time on admin, and they also they want to do value added work, and so like everybody wins when they're doing more value added work in that world. And to be honest, it's not like people have been looking for work on our staff. I don't know, Bonnie and Millie, it's not like people have been struggling to find work this year. But we did have to make that change over time with our staff. That took a while to get the right kind of alignment there. And then, for me, the last thing I'll say, and I can do a quick demo for anybody that wants to stick around here. I didn't actually even want to start this company. I did it because practice was really struggling post-COVID, like we talked about in the very beginning. And our margins got pressed and we were having turnover, and it was a really bad experience for our clients. And it started just falling back on me in terms of feeling like I was working 24/7 to like fix it. And that's why we began this thing. And it was to make the job better. If you look at like software development, I think, which is a similar area in terms of the complexity of the work that's being done, it's not that AI is going to replace software engineers. There's probably going to be more in the future. And I think the same is true with accountants. If we can get them to actually, come into the industry, new people, there will not be fewer accountants, but these accountants that are in the industry are going to be using better tools. They're going to be armed with AI to be able to do better work. That's the vision that we have. It's why we built Juno for accountants and not for consumers, because to be honest, even at 98 or 99% accuracy, it's going to do better on the CPA exam than I did. But it's not perfect. And so it's better in the hands of a professional that knows how to like, this doesn't sound right. I'm going to double check this thing, right? Like that type of intuition is really, really important. And you're seeing that in like the software development world, some of the fastest growing companies we've ever seen. Like Cursor and Windsurf and these guys have gone like $0 to $500 million of revenue in 1 year, which is insane, because they're helping, what is it, like a really intelligent knowledge worker as like an assistant. And so that's the kind of paradigm that we see playing out in this space as well. And for folks that want to stay, I'm happy to do a quick demo here on this. I'm going to pop this up. Bonnie, Millie, thank you all for joining. By the way, you guys are welcome to jump off if you want, unless you want to weigh in on the demo, which you're also welcome to stick around for. And I will jump in on this thing. So I'm going to do an abbreviated version, by the way. People can sign up for demos, anybody who wants to. But I will jump in here because I was remiss and I thought we'd talk about the firm and not about Juno, but I will jump in here at the end on the Juno front. So you guys will see, like when you first log in, all your clients are going to download from your tax software. So this all gets set up for you. In your trial, we give you a couple example clients, but you can see here, like I can go to any client that I want. And this is the preparer portion of our product. And I'm just going to show you guys a couple little things. I'll jump around a little bit here. But you can see when you upload documents here, you can pull these in from TaxDome, you can pull them in from Smart Vault, or you can drag and drop. Actually, our team is still dragging and dropping because we use Intuit Link. And you're going to see things propped up here for review if necessary. And you can see I've uploaded just a ton of documents here. We do this just to test the system, but I'll show you one that's awaiting review. So we've got like an alert on here that, hey, like the name doesn't match Daisy Duck. So it's pretty cool how we've got like messaging back and forth. And then the one thing that's flagged for review, and this is pretty common that people maybe misunderstand this a little bit. Well, because it's the wrong name, it can't tell who the actual, if it's taxpayer or spouse. So it does flag a review. So when I say we're like 96, 97, 98% accurate on most of these forms, and we're 99 really on the short forms, we might still have something flagged for review for a particular reason because we're applying metadata and logic to these different forms. But I can validate that, validates the form, and you can kind of go through there. If I've got, let's see if I have one in here, a Schedule C, I don't see one on here. You're going to have a slightly different kind of matching. It looks actually very similar, but it's a slightly different field for that. And then let me look and see if I've got, oh, here's a Schedule C, excuse me. This is what that looks like. So it's got the original definition and then where it's mapping it to, and I can go ahead and change those to the Schedule C template. If it's not a Schedule C, I can change it to an E or an F. We don't have any way of knowing which schedule it needs to go to. So when we take like an Excel document or a PDF, we'll have you reclassify that if you need to. And then again, when you import, you actually will map it to the correct form. And then let me show you guys reviewer here for just a second. Let me see if I've got preparation completed. Okay, this one should have. I'm just going to skip through this step. Yeah, perfect. And then, so what happens is you do all the data entry and you create the work paper. And then the person goes and finishes the return. And then when you're done with that, you can pull the return back in for an initial review. And there's kind of two key things we do here. Again, this is a new part of our product. We'll blow out over time. But one is like the source to return check. So we're going to look and say, hey, does this match, like the 1098 here in this case, does it match what's on the tax return? And so it's saying, hey, there's a significant discrepancy here. The PDF is showing $100,000 of mortgage interest. That's a lot of mortgage interest, by the way. And the Schedule A is showing $6,000. So significant discrepancy. We actually will call out here if it's limited, not like this one is severely limited, but if it's limited clearly based on the size of the mortgage, if the size of the mortgage is on the 1098, we would say like this is being limited appropriately based on the mortgage interest limitation. So there's some other knowledge kind of built in here, but this is all the source documents, right? So the first thing a reviewer typically does is go through all the source documents and make sure they match what's on the return. We're trying to supplement this for you. And actually, again, like my preparers use this before I even get to it as a reviewer. The next thing is the gotcha checks, which are a couple hundred different checks that we have. We took my reviewer checklist for my practice and we built these. And so it's going to look at like foreign reporting or QBI, things like that to make sure everything is reported correctly. Here's a good example of like one of the, and again, like these aren't errors on the return necessarily. These are like, things that should be reviewed basically, right? They're like exceptions. They're not necessarily wrong. It's just double checking a million different things. So this is saying like, hey, your gross receipts is blank, but you've got significant expenses on your Schedule C. So like that's out of line. You're over 120% of gross receipts. You should really double check this. So again, like this could be legitimate. I think with hobby loss rules like this probably isn't legitimate, but it's saying, hey, there's something exceptional going on here. You should have a careful look at this. And that's kind of the point of this this tool is to like really flag what you need to look at more carefully as we go through time. Like we're going to blow this out quite a bit. But here's another example of like there's a wash sale adjustment and it's saying like, okay, that's pretty unusual. You should definitely look at that and make sure this qualifies as a wash sale. And so it's giving you the logic that you would need to really prove that. And then the last thing I'll show you guys is we have, kind of a chat style assistant where you can do research, things like that. And we have an advisor product as well. And let me see if I can just pull up one for you guys to look at here. So I can ask it to compare returns year over year. I can have it do a delivery letter for a return. I can ask it to look at like if a K1 was reported correctly on a return. There's a million different things I can do here. Think of this as like our deep research kind of part of our product. And I can even say like, hey, if this person formed an S Corp, how much would they save for their Schedule C income, right? And it would recommend reasonable compensation and all the things you would imagine. So it can handle quite a bit of complexity. I use it mostly for in my reviews. I'm actually using this to go and look at like year over year changes often. And that's something we're actually going to pull into the reviewer product. But I look to see like, hey, was like the foreign reporting consistent between the last 2 years? Things like that can really supplement my review. So I know that's a really quick overview on that, but I think a general sense of kind of what we're doing with Juno. And if you guys want more information, you can go to juno.tax and sign up for a demo there. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to questions here, and sorry for taking so long to do this. Oh, I love this. I'm going to hammer through quite a few of these. I'll go back as far as I can. If I miss you, you're welcome to email me at dave at juno.tax. Who does the admin work is the first one. Great question. I mean, we've kind of done away with the admin work and our admins are doing preparation work instead. So that has been a big improvement, doing more value-added work. For a new firm coming onto Juno, there's a question about the onboarding. So yeah, we have an onboarding team. Process change is hard. And we typically within an hour can have everyone on your team running their first return and exporting it to their tax software. It really depends. Like sometimes the tax software, we've got to troubleshoot if you have like antivirus that's blocking us or something like that. That's why we do that manually. And that's why actually we stopped doing that in our free trials, because there's all these like little exceptional things. Almost all of them we can solve within 30 minutes, but it's not a very good experience for people if they don't have someone on live with them. So again, like we set up, it's 30 minutes by default. And within the 30 minutes, you'll install the application, you'll connect it to your tax software, you'll build your client list, and you'll be able to export your first return. So within 30 minutes, like it's really, really quick. This is not at all like changing practice management software. And then, okay, going through SOC 2, we are in the middle of a SOC 2 audit. We will be type 1 certified first. That I think takes typically like 4 weeks or something like that. We're in the middle of that process now, and then we'll begin the observation period for SOC 2 type 2. So we are in the process, but not SOC 2 certified at the moment. And brokerage statements are supported. And we support image files. So we can do both, and we can take any sort of brokerage statement. If they're over a couple hundred pages, we'll actually tell you this, but that can impact the accuracy. But the really cool part that we built is not only do we extract data from those files, we also will tell you like if we've seen things that we did not extract. So if we see like municipal bonds or something like that, if we don't get it correctly, we actually will tell you like we did not extract your municipal bond interest on there, and you'll see that on the extraction screen. You can add a new Schedule C to it. If you have a new one come in, you can just add that as a new Schedule C. That's no worries. On mileage and home office, we don't yet do mileage and home office for those. That is a good question. It's probably something that we will want to add at some point. It's a little bit wonkier because like the tax software handles that in different ways. So that's not one that we've taken on yet. But we do tell you like we have an export report of all the forms that we exported. And again, like you can see what we did not export pretty clearly. And in terms of the tax tome organizer responses, they do get mapped into Juno. So you'll push the questionnaire and the answers to the questionnaire into Juno. We don't yet take that information and put it in the tax return, but we do use it in Reviewer. So when we're reviewing a return, we'll look at the organizer answers and we'll compare them to what's on the return. So if they said they had a child named Johnny and his social security number was whatever it was, we'll go and look for that child on the return. And we'll actually even say like, hey, you could consider, tuition or education cost credits because you have a new child, things like that. So Reviewer can help there, but we're not yet putting it in just because it's unstructured data. We also don't update the banking info yet. So that's something that, again, it's like unstructured data. So I don't want to overwrite fields like all over the place. I think right now I'd err on the side of being very predictable in terms of what we do on a tax return. And we'll grow that over time as we see like how accurately we can extract and then put that data into the tax software. We do charge, like you've got pricing. I think if anybody's got questions on pricing, someone posted that. Thank you for posting that out there. And Tanishka also set up a demo link that you guys can use. Okay, so I'll stop there. If you guys have other questions, again, you can get a hold of me at dave@juno.tax, or you can contact our team. If you sign up for a trial, you also can, there's like a support email, support@juno.tax that you'll see. You guys can go in and upload your own documents. We've worked really hard to try to keep that trial available for folks. And so you're welcome to go in and play with it. You don't have to take my word for it. You can upload documents, play around with that quite a bit. And yeah, just really appreciate that. We started this thing to really help out my practice. And I knew it would have a big impact for us. And I thought, if there's 100,000 of these businesses in the US, if it can save me 6 figures every year, then I think it's worth, spending some time of my life on this. So I really appreciate everybody that's come along. We've had some amazing early customers that have just been like great advocates for us in terms of giving us feedback, working with our team and all of those things. And so if you guys have other questions or you ever have feedback, you're welcome to reach out to our team. Really appreciate that immensely. And we're working super hard here in Q4 to get this thing in an even better spot for tax season. So excited about what's coming. And thank you all for taking the time and staying over as well. Still got 100 folks plus, and I really do appreciate that. It's very humbling to be able to build software in this space. I'm not even a software guy. I'm a CPA. So I really appreciate just everybody who's come along for the journey. So thank you all for the time today. If you guys have other questions, email us. You can get a hold of us any way you want. And yeah, and thanks again for taking the time. Appreciate it, guys.